The Whiskey Rebellion by Marcus Singamon. The Whiskey Rebellion is telling you how they taxed whiskey to create a new source of income for the government. It took place in western Pennsylvania. It started August 1st through late October 1794. In western Pennsylvania, the average American family drank about 6 gallons of whiskey a year, and tax would cost about $1.50 after the whiskey tax raise. Whiskey was very important to western Pennsylvania, and they often sometimes used it in place of money. And also, Alexander Hamilton knew by placing a tax on whiskey, it would raise about $800,000 a year. So that's one of the reasons why he taxed it. The people involved in the Whiskey Rebellion were George Washington, as you can see right about here, and Albert Gallatin, which is shown in this picture right here, and also militia, farmers, and rebels shown in the picture below, and Alexander Hamilton shown on the bottom left. Here's a little information about the people who were involved in the Whiskey Rebellion. Let's start with Alexander Hamilton. He was a tax collector, and he is the one who asked the President George Washington to approve the tax on whiskey. And George Washington did approve, which created the Whiskey Rebellion. Next is our militia and farmers. The farmers were very angry because Hamilton would take most of the farmers' money that they made off of whiskey and crops or whatever their source of income was. And they believed that they shouldn't tax whiskey or take their source of income, which is why they rebelled towards Hamilton. Next is Albert Gallatin. He didn't agree on the whiskey taxation either. He took side with the rebels and fought against his own tax collectors because he believed that it wasn't right for them to tax whiskey and take the farmers' income. So, that's basically all the people involved in the Whiskey Rebellion. And as the Whiskey Rebellion moved on, the rebels started attacking and fighting, and it began to get out of hand. The rebels started to attack and make threats towards tax collectors. They started lighting fires around town and making a huge scene, as you can see in this photo on the left. It shows that the rebels are fighting what looks like one of George Washington's army members. And in this picture on the right, you can see that they're fighting around town, breaking windows and buildings, and causing a scene. Once George Washington finally noticed that the rebels were making a huge scene and destroying the towns, his only actions were to make an army and put a stop to the rebels' actions. As you can see in this photo here, George Washington is asking the army to fight with him and stop the rebels, and they did agree on helping him. Here's the same picture I showed you in the previous slide, but this is just further detailed. As you can see, there's tax collectors right about here, getting attacked by rebels right about here, and all this just because of the Whiskey Rebellion and why they taxed it. Here's also the same picture I showed you in the previous slide, just I'm going to break it down for you. Here you have George Washington, the president at the time, and behind him you have the tax collectors. And over here on the far left you have the army men listening to George Washington as he asks them to fight by his side against the rebels. Later on in the Whiskey Rebellion, the threats and the scenes of the rebels started getting really, really serious. As you can see in the house in the left corner, it looks like it's on fire. It's on fire because the rebels had lit Alexander Hamilton's house on fire because he's the one who taxed the whiskey. And he did make it out alive. Over here on the right, you can see the army men moving in to fight off the rebels towards towards Alexander Hamilton's house. Towards the end of the Whiskey Rebellion, once the rebels had been stopped and caused no more harm, many of the rebels were arrested for their actions, but later on they were released due to lack of evidence. Out of the many rebels, only 2 were held accountable towards the Whiskey Rebellion.